Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Gender Justice with Silver Linings. I'm Mariah Silver. I am very lucky today because we have a special guest. Colby Bruno has joined us. She is senior counsel at the Victim Rights Law Center in Boston. They have offices in Massachusetts and Oregon. Victim Rights Law Center provides civil legal services for sexual assault survivors. They're one of the first in the entire country to solely provide civil legal services to sexual assault and rape victims. They do really incredible work, so we're really grateful that Colby was able to join us today to talk to us about rollbacks in Title IX and campus guidance. So let's dive in. So if you can, Colby, just give us a little bit of information on what is Title IX and how did we get from Title IX, which I think most of us think of college sports maybe, to sexual assault issues on campus?
So Title IX is a civil rights law that protects gender equity. So that's why we think about it with athletics, because it's usually if a certain amount of money is going to boys' athletics, that certain amount of money also has to go to girls' athletics. So that's kind of that gender parity that we're talking about. So, but also what Title IX protects against is sexual harassment. So because disproportionately the victims of sexual harassment are women, Title IX, a civil rights law, says that men and women should be treated equally in the workplace not in the workplace, but, on the campuses or wherever else, Title IX applies. And that because of that, sexual harassment is the big umbrella topic. And under that are sexual assault and rape. And Title IX applies to everyone in education, kindergarten, all the way through to college. So you have Title IX and its application is to basically boys and girls while they're in school. And Title IX requires that you don't discriminate against someone because it's a civil rights law. And so you can't discriminate against someone. But what happens is because sexual assault and rape and sexual harassment, as we've seen, disproportionately affect women. This is how Title IX gets implicated.
Because it's being viewed as this gender issue.
A gender issue.
Exactly. Interesting. So various administrations, dating back, I think, what did you say?
1997.
1997. So there have been guidances written by the Department of Education, by different administrations throughout the years. Under the Obama administration, there was the 2014 guidance, but now we have a new Trump administration guidance. Can you give us a sense of the trajectory of these guidances? Did it start small and now they're really robust, or how has this really gone over the course of history in terms of the actual guidances themselves from the Department of Education?
So like the 97 and the 2001 guidances are like tomes. They're like legal, gigantic. They're thick. They're hard, sometimes hard to follow, sometimes not. And what I thought in 2011 and 2014, what I thought was happening is that they were the Obama administration and the Department of Education and the Office for Civil Rights, all three of those sort of all working on behalf of Title IX. They took all of those and they just sort of simplified it in what they call the Dear Colleague letter, which is 2011. And in the Dear Colleague letter,
what administration?
that was Trump. Sorry. That was Obama. So that was his first term. And then the next one was in 2014. And that was a frequently asked questions document. And that was things that got published by the White House, which was kind of cool. But in April of 2011, there was which was the first guidance, basically, in a long time. And all it said, it was 19 pages.
So it was short.
It was short. It went out to every single president in the country. President of colleges. And it said, sexual assault and rape are a problem on college campuses. Here's the studies, here's the data, and this is what Title IX says. Title IX says that girls and boys should have equal education, and that if a girl is sexually assaulted or sexually harassed, then the access to her education is impaired.
Okay.
And here's a whole bunch of ways that you can remedy that impairment.
Okay.
So when someone is raped on your college campus, here's a whole bunch of things that you can do. Now, that list was included in the 2001 tome. So it just simplified everything.
Okay.
With
but it also
one
put
exception.
The colleges on alert. It sounds like that this is actually an issue. Pay attention.
Yes, absolutely. It definitely raised awareness. It was a really important step for a White House and an administration to do, because in the past years, the Office for Civil Rights, the Department of Education, they were just like wet mops.
Okay.
They didn't do very much, and you get a Title IX lawsuit, and they went down to you got a complaint, and it went down to headquarters down in D.C. and it didn't really do anything. It didn't really go anywhere, and survivors weren't being serviced, and Title IX was just being violated hand over fist.
Yeah.
So this was just this really great, reminder that this is what the 2001 guidance said. You need to abide by it. If you don't, our enforcement, our sort of long arm of the enforcement, which is the Office for Civil Rights and the Department of Education, we will come down on you, school X, university X, if you do not comply with Title IX, with one exception. And that is that in 2011, they added that there should be a standard of evidence, which is preponderance of the evidence.
Okay, so now...
That is the only thing that changed from the 2001 to the 2011
So in
guidance.
10 years, there was that
one change.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And then we shift to 2014. We have the Obama guidance, which was also listed as sort of frequently asked questions.
Yes, and that's very long and very detailed. And that was in response to the 2011 one because
it was so
colleges and universities were confused.
Oh.
They were doing everything that they could to abide by Title IX. And actually, they were doing great stuff.
Right.
They were doing great stuff post-2011. Awesome stuff. But some still had really serious questions about privacy and mandated reporting and issues that were really nuanced.
Right.
And so in 2014, 3 years after after OCR published the Dear Colleague letter, they issued some frequently asked questions. Literally, they were frequently asked questions like, how do we maintain the privacy of someone who, doesn't want to go forward? Or how can we provide accommodations to someone who wants to remain anonymous?
Right.
And just frequently asked questions. And so they answered a bunch of those questions. And there were a lot of questions because people really wanted some clarity. And then in 2017, the Trump administration came along and issued their own set of guidances, despite the fact they said that Obama did it wrong and issued guidances without a period of notice and comment.
Okay, so typically when you issue guidance in the federal government, there's an opportunity for notice and comment for organizations, the public, to weigh in.
Yes.
For whatever reason, the Trump administration skipped that step.
Well, and they said, and the funny thing is, the ironic part is they said the Obama administration skipped that step, and then they went ahead and skipped it too.
Oh, okay.
So they were calling out the Obama administration. So the guidance, it's tricky. And I think that we can get past this simply by saying, I think there's a lot of government loopholes, and one of them is in a letter. So the Obama administration issued a Dear Colleague letter.
I see.
Which was not a guidance document.
I understand. Okay.
So it was not set to the same requirements of notice and public comment. That said, they had a lot of public comment, and that's how they that's how they derived
the document originated.
Right. Nevertheless, it was not a policy and procedure guidance. A formal guidance, I guess.
So now we have the 2017 guidance from the Trump administration. My understanding is it's like 7 or 8 pages.
Yes, not very long.
Not very long. Give us a sense. The news, the media has been reporting on this as a rollback. Organizations have been saying this is a significant rollback. Can you tell me more? So we have our 2014 sort of standard, but now we have a new set. Why is this a rollback? Why is it being called a rollback? What have we lost here, or what have survivors or students lost with this new guidance?
So survivors, one of the first answers that comes to my mind is survivors have lost the right to appeal. So the right to appeal being when I'm in a college and I file inside that college and I say, this person assaulted me, and they come and the school comes out in favor of the accused student.
Okay.
So the perpetrator, the alleged perpetrator.
Okay.
I, as the student, am not allowed to appeal that decision. I, as the victim and the accuser, I'm not allowed to appeal that decision. However, under the Trump administration document, if that same scenario happens, but the person is found responsible for rape or sexual assault, the accused is allowed to appeal that decision.
Okay, so under the Obama administration guidance, the right to appeal was afforded equitably. Mm-hmm. So both the accused student and the student who was a victim and accusing someone of assaulting them, if there was a decision made, they both had the right to appeal.
Exactly.
Under this new guidance, essentially victims or students coming forward to accuse others don't have that right anymore.
Right. It's basically if the perpetrator loses, the perpetrator gets to appeal.
But the victim
does not.
Okay. Are there other things that come to mind in terms of rollbacks, that what's different between 2014 and 2017?
So another big one is the amount of accommodations that can be provided to victims.
Okay.
I think under the previous administration, these were really robust. They were all sorts of interim measures. They went through, you could change your classes, you could change your school, you could change the time that you came to school, you could change your dormitory. You could even put in an agreement where, the victim, the alleged victim, would use the library at a certain time, and the alleged perpetrator would not be allowed to use it during that time.
So it sounds like these are similar accommodations you would give to a student who has a disability on campus, or maybe has an individual education plan in a high school.
Absolutely.
So it does really sound aligned with civil rights accommodations that are given to students on, again, as you said, sort of from K to college.
Yeah. And I mean, if you think about the impact that rape or sexual assault has on an individual person, there's PT, post-traumatic stress disorder,
right,
suicidal ideations. I mean, someone they become agoraphobic. They don't want to go outside anymore.
Yeah.
They don't want to go to class anymore for fear of seeing the perpetrator.
Right.
There's so many different levels of, problems that arise that aren't just, I think, what people might think of like run-of-the-mill problems, like your physical safety,
right,
or your physical well-being. It's such an emotional crime, that it has such a deep and lasting impact on someone. So it's really problematic.
Okay, so to step back to a macro level, that's why this is all so important, that we've determined that these issues are gendered, as in they happen to women more frequently than men. And where Title IX has given civil rights to ensure that equity, and that equity becomes these accommodations that victims of sexual assault and rape on campus have access to, or at least had access to, under the 2014 Dear Colleague letter. And we've seen a lot of that disappear under the new Trump administration.
Yeah, it's really all about the equitable access to education. Okay. And when someone is sexually harassed / sexually assaulted / raped,
right,
you don't have the same access to education as the perpetrator.
Right.
You just don't, because you don't go out, you don't go to class, you don't leave your dorm, and it's not always 100% that, but who would want to see the person that raped them on campus? Just like you run around the corner, or you're just in the dining area.
Yeah.
It is a very difficult thing.
Deeply traumatizing.
Deeply traumatizing and re-traumatizing. And oftentimes victims say that the experience at school after the rape is more traumatizing than the rape.
So having to see that person over
and over
in
again,
classes, in the dining hall, just walking around,
friends
campus,
get
in
involved.
The gym.
You're talking about retaliation. I mean, and I think that the rollbacks have really cast a light and a spotlight on that happening because with the rollbacks, for example, one of the things is that you have two different trajectories that a student can go pursue. One of them is the criminal justice system, so filing a complaint
with like police,
local police, and then there's the school one. And they both are distinct for very good reason because they have different standards of evidence. They have different consequences. You know, in the criminal, you can lose your liberty. You go to jail.
Right.
You know, and in the civil, the worst that could happen is you're expelled.
So you're not losing life, liberty, or property.
Exactly. Okay. Exactly. And so in the new guidance, the school may hold up their investigation if a student wants to pursue both. So a student who files with local police, that investigation could take 60 days and or 6 months and or a year, and the full resolution 4 years. I mean, I represented a client. It was 4 years before she got any decision from the criminal justice system.
Right, because even if he's convicted or not, there's always an appeal.
Yes.
Which then
exactly. It takes a long time to resolve. But if you do the school system, the civil rights avenue,
correct.
You all the time that you're in it, you are receiving accommodations so that you can maintain your access to education.
Right, okay.
And so, but what the rollback said is that, and now the civil rights one can yield entirely to the criminal one.
I see.
So whereas someone could have been done with their civil rights complaint in 60 days or even 6 months, now the school has permission from the administration and from the Department of Education that they can wait until the criminal case is resolved. And when a criminal case is resolved in 4 years, remember, you only go to college for 4 years.
Right.
So your civil rights are under attack for the entire time that you are at school. And the Trump administration has said, that's fine.
Yeah. So that actually is a great lead into my next question. So the Victim Rights Law Center, along with two other co-plaintiffs, as my understanding, has actually sued the Trump administration and Betsy DeVos, the head of the Department of Education, over these rollbacks. Can you give us a sense of what is this lawsuit like? What's the legal basis? What are we talking about? And what are you guys hoping to sort of achieve with this lawsuit?
Yeah. So it derives from equal protection. Okay, so again, the same idea as Title IX, gender equity, right? Equal protection applies to gender. So, both genders should be equally protected under the Constitution.
So this is really about equality, equity, and protecting the civil rights of both genders on campus. And correct me if I'm wrong, so would the argument then be that these rollbacks have violated that equity?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And for a multitude of reasons. The first one is because the people who serve justice and the equal rights advocates are the co-plaintiffs with the Victim Rights Law Center.
Okay.
And we serve individual survivors of rape and sexual assault. We represent them.
Those organizations.
Right.
Okay.
So what we have seen is firsthand from the mouths of survivors is that those survivors have no problem disclosing. So they will tell their story to whomever, but they do not want to make a complaint through the civil rights avenue in colleges because they don't think that with the new rollbacks, anything is going to happen.
Wow.
And that given that if the school violates Title IX, they are saying we have zero confidence in the Trump administration and in Betsy DeVos's administration. Zero confidence that if we ever said that our school violated Title IX, that they would ever do anything. So the victims are basically being hamstrung. So they're saying that these new policies, that what the effect of these new policies is that victims are cast into silence once again.
Wow.
And not coming forward to assert their civil rights.
Wow. So you're saying there's these two avenues that they're not pursuing. One, filing a complaint with the Department of Education saying, hey, my school violated my Title IX civil rights. And they're also not filing with the school's own process saying, you know, some code of conduct with the school was violated.
Yes.
So this really has created from what you're describing, some kind of chilling effect with students not being able to, or at least not feeling comfortable given this new rollback coming forward.
Absolutely. I think the numbers are staggering. I think that the amount of people that have come to us disclosing rape and sexual assaults, our local rape crisis centers have said the same thing. These rollbacks have had a serious detrimental impact on the way that schools deal with these problems. And I think the message is clear to victims. Yeah. This administration has no interest in your rights.
Wow. Is it your sense that as a victim rights leader in this field and at Victim Rights Law Center, a leader across the nation on this issue, do you feel like you're being heard by the administration? And in the past, administrations reach out to victim rights organizations. Has that happened with the Trump administration?
No. I mean, in fact, in September, when they rolled out this guidance, when they rolled out this new letter, there was not one survivor organization in the room because they weren't invited. We weren't invited. Wow. So the entire population of people that watched Betsy DeVos at the Scalia Law School was entirely families of accused students, some administrators, whatever. Not one person in that room was an advocate for victims of violence.
So there's really, there was a complete void in terms of, I mean, because we are talking about an issue of equity. There was a void in terms of the other half, if you will, that needs to be heard on this issue, and the other half actually being this side that these Title IX is meant to protect.
Well, yeah, and I think that their opinion is that it protects both genders, right? Men and women.
Yeah,
so
100%.
and that is true.
Yeah.
That is absolutely true. But when an administration comes out so biased in favor of the accused students, like the alleged perpetrators, you cannot help but file a lawsuit.
Right.
You cannot help it, because it was a hugely proud moment in my life to be connected with with my organization and filing against the Trump administration, because they have been so biased against victims of rape and sexual assault. They have not believed them. They have systematically taken away their rights. They have come out in the press and said that more due process is needed for the accused students. Without any regard to how the victims are being treated. Without any regard. And that has changed a lot in the past, year and a half now.
So Betsy DeVos recently in the news sort of commented in what seemed like a response to these lawsuits and accusations that she isn't protecting all students. I'm actually going to read what she had said recently. She said, "It's hurtful to me when I'm criticized for not upholding the rights of students, the civil rights of students, and that nothing could be further from the truth." So I know Victim Rights Law Center issued a response to this, but I'm kind of curious what your message is to Betsy DeVos. It sounds like she's trying to make this personal, that she's somehow personally hurt by this. But I'm curious what your response is to what she had to say.
I mean, my response to her is, I think in part and sort of comically and not, you're totally delusional if you think that what you have done is in the best interest of victims of rape and sexual assault. You have systematically rolled back rights of transgender students, the civil rights of transgender students, the civil rights of rape and sexual assault survivors. And for her to claim some sort of, try to guilt people into thinking that we've done something wrong, because for me, I would say, just look at your own track record.
Right.
Just look at the comments that you made. I mean, right? Her own Secretary of Education, Candace Jackson, said that 90%, I think she said in the New York Times, 90% of these cases are drunken regret sex.
Right.
Now, if that person shouldn't go from that administration, then I don't know what we're playing with here.
That's basically, on a very basic level, factually inaccurate.
Absolutely.
Right.
And shows 100% bias for accused students, for alleged perpetrators.
I'm kind of thinking through this, what's kind of scary about what you're saying is that they don't have the information they need in terms of the background of sexual violence, the history, the trauma involved with it, the statistics, the data, what we know now about this population. And the people in the past who provided that to government is people
are being shut out.
Or like Victim Rights Law Center and survivors who, like you've just said, have been shut out.
Yeah, it's terrible. I think it's like a comical, like laughable moment that she could portray herself as somehow hurt for us acknowledging the facts, which is you rolled back rights for transgender students. Your Secretary of Education said this offensive and wrong and incorrect statement, and only after receiving a bunch of heat did she half-heartedly apologize, which don't believe that for a second, because after the half-hearted apology, you roll back Title IX and the protections for victims. And so we know where this administration sits. We know that they sit with accused perpetrators. We know that in the past, our own president has been accused of these same things. So I think we know really well where they sit. And for her to pretend like she's hurt is laughable.
Yeah. And I think you bring up an important point that words are dangerous. When you have people in high level of government who are being, their words are being taken seriously, as are their statements. And so when, Candace makes a statement that all these incidences are somehow just drunken mistakes, it really does damage to our public awareness and consciousness of these issues in our country.
It just feeds into the myths that for decades we have been trying to dispel. For decades.
Yeah. So this is a lot and rather depressing. And I'm wondering for our viewers out there, for regular people, if we hear this and we're thinking, this isn't okay, I want to do something to impact this. What would you say to them? What can, regular, average, run-of-the-mill folks do if they want to make a difference and they think, no, this isn't okay?
I think they should do what college students have been doing, for the past, say, 8 years, which is stand up and make a stink about it. Go on social media, tweet at our organization, make sure that your voice is heard because you do make a difference. And all of that negative publicity and those negative comments and all that stuff, that is good. And that does make change. And I think the reason why I say it is because one of the biggest culture shifts that we've seen is the amount of comfort that students have coming forward on college campuses. And that is entirely due to students on those campuses making sure that those people know that they're not alone. Making sure, whether it's through their social media or through their flyers or through their their curriculums and their take back the night, whatever they are, that they are allowed to come forward and that they will be supported. And so I think, to me, it can be as basic as when someone discloses something to you, believe them.
Right.
Just that it's okay that is your first thought.
At a basic level, believe survivors.
At the most basic of levels, right? A child comes to you and says, this didn't feel right. I didn't like this. I think that, you can liken it, to something like Larry Nassar, who has all of these victims, but throughout the history of these victims, many of these victims came and told people. In 2014, they went to MSU and they told. That was 3 years between 2014 and 2017. Those were countless numbers of victims that could have been saved. And I do liken it to saving someone from a burning building.
Right.
That's what that is.
Yeah.
And the fact that if your message means something and you're out there and you're saying this happened to me too and whatever, I guarantee you that if you're one person saying that about the perpetrator, there are plenty of others.
Right.
There are plenty of others. And it should, in our culture, it should just be sufficient that one person says it, but unfortunately, that's not the way it is.
Right. We shouldn't have to wait till there are 200 victims before we pay attention.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. And you know, you even take something as mainstream as like the Cosby, you know, it shouldn't be that people are saying, oh, those women knew, you know, or, you know, I mean, he had a particular plan for every single one of those victims.
Very predatory.
And he admitted that he would use these drugs in that way. And yet somehow people still don't believe it.
Right.
I mean, scores of women on the cover of Time and whatever. And still, when you read the comments to these people come out and say he didn't do it. How could we say he did it? I don't. Yeah. That's the culture that we live in.
Yeah, and you're right. It speaks to a broader issue in our country, not just of believing survivors, but of believing women in general, and what women tell as their truths and their stories, and our innate response to not believe women. So it's certainly a message about believing women and dispelling those myths that women are liars and hysterical in some way.
And I think just turning the tide, right? Like I think Jackson Katz was just quoted as saying that instead of saying how many victims of rape or sexual assault are on campus, we should say how many men are perpetrating rapes on campus.
Right.
Something as tiny as that, where you think it's tiny, but it's not. Right. It makes a big impact. And I think that is the moment in time where we will reach a level and a consciousness that makes us think. And that's what culture shift is. Now, it's a long time coming, or a long time out there, but that's what it is.
That's, you know, it's funny. It reminds me exactly of the Aziz Ansari case, where we had first response was, why didn't this woman leave? As opposed to why did he continue when she was clearly uncomfortable? Yes. So you're very, I completely agree. Flipping these scripts and challenging the way that we view these issues is critical.
And I think challenging the way that we teach these issues also.
Yes.
You know, I mean, I've seen a lot of really good consent billboards and consent curriculums that talk about, so here are 50 ways that you can say no. That doesn't feel good. I don't like that.
Yeah.
Not now.
Yeah.
No. You know, there are plenty of ways, like, I don't like that. You know, those are all other ways that someone is trying to communicate the message no. And if you are a person who doesn't listen to that, then you are a perpetrator. I mean, that's what it is. In the deepest, darkest, you know, closets, or, you know, out and wide open, when someone is saying to you no, when someone is pushing you away, that is basic consent.
So we always like to end with a silver lining, because what we talk about is not so happy all the time. So what's your silver lining in all of this? What do you see that it really keeps us going in times like this, when we're really struggling upstream in a lot of ways?
I mean, I think the administration and the decisions that they're making really gets me down. And I think they're making the wrong choices. But we have come really far. You know, in the decade plus that I've been representing victims, you know, we have a raised awareness. We have a different consciousness about this. It's in the media. There's the Me Too movement. We have celebrities fighting. For some reason, celebrities, I think, mean more. Their opinion means more than those of us who are
the
experts on this, right? Experts on the topic. But we have people who are invested in the fight. And we are not going to be powerless anymore. And I think that, to me, gives me the most hope, and is certainly the silver lining, that we are not going away. These messages and these, you know, these problems are not going away. But at the same time, we are not powerless, and we can fight against this, and we will. So if you are an accused, you know, just know that we will not go away. And I think, to me, that is in colleges, in high schools, a lot of students are doing that. A lot of victims are doing that. And I think that is my silver lining, because the more it is out there, the more we are going to believe, the more that is going to shift the culture.
My silver lining is that people like Colby exist, that there are attorneys out there who are standing by victims, have their back, and are willing to do anything, even risking their careers, to make sure that they stand by their clients, stand by victims, and ensure that schools are safe and healthy environments. So thank you for joining us today. Thank you, Colby, for being with us. We have a lot to think about, but we will see you next time. Thanks.